Waverly Knobs Entertainment presents the Branch Out Podcast with your hosts Evan Charles Anderson and Tatiana Ivan. We discuss all the exciting facets of digital media and marketing for businesses and professionals. Our goal is to empower you so you can increase your knowledge, engagement, and brand identity. Let's get ready to branch out. Thank you for listening to episode 25 of Branch Out, the digital media and marketing podcast.
Yay, our podcast can now rent a car without incurring an extra fee.
That's right, the Big 2-5. And what a way to celebrate the Big 2-5 with a fantastic interview.
Indeed.
We have Mr. Dan Shure of Evolving SEO with us. And to give you a little bit more info on Dan, he has been obsessed with SEO since 2007. So, in other words, he's had a fever, and the only cure has been SEO. And he started helping a friend out to jumpstart his company and officially established Evolving SEO in late 2010. His company focuses in on hands-on SEO consultation and training. He's done multiple industry guest speaking engagements, especially for Moz, Affiliate Summit, and for SMX East in New York. And he also has recently launched a podcast, which you all should check out after this, which is Experts on the Wire, which you can find on iTunes. And let me tell you too, Dan has a very diverse background ranging from web design to email marketing and social media to music, and then of course, SEO. So with his passions and obsessions, he can now help you with your SEO. So welcome to the show, Dan. How you doing today?
I am excellent. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. We're so excited to have you on and to give us some of your insight and expertise into the world of SEO and how they kind of cross-mesh with marketing.
So to start things off, talk to us about what has been the evolution of Dan Shure and Evolving SEO from 2007 till now.
That is a great question. I love the tie-in to my company name, Evolving. That comes up a lot. I can speak personally first, and then we'll get into Evolving SEO. For me, as you said, I have a degree in music. I went to UNH up in New Hampshire, got a degree in classical piano performance, which is probably the most worthless degree you can have in terms of getting a job or a career of anything that, pays anything of substance. So I gigged as a musician through the large part of my 20s. I taught music lessons. And then in 2006, late 2006, I got married. That's 10-year anniversary coming up, by the way, which I'm very excited about. And obviously, kind of lifestyle changes, right? You want something a little more stable. You want something that's kind of a day job, not gigging in bars till 2 a.m. So what I did is I started working for my dad, who's a sculptor, and he has a sculpture studio out in Woburn. And of course, he has websites for his business. And I designed some websites for him. I learned PHP, I learned SQL, I learned HTML and CSS, and kind of built an e-commerce site for him. And for some other people, like I mentioned in my bio there, a friend and whatnot. So I kind of just got into building websites the way a lot of people do, just out of necessity. It was a very gradual shift into finally getting into SEO. And it was around 2008, 2009 that I discovered that SEO was like a thing, that you could only do just SEO. And it was actually by discovering the SEO 101 podcast at that time that I realized these people were talking about SEO and it was their job. Like that's what they did all day. They didn't design stuff. They didn't program stuff. They just did SEO. And that's when it hit me that this is something that I could do too. So I started shifting from taking on kind of web design jobs. And I should also say I'm not really a designer. I kind of just piece things together in Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm not a designer by any means. Also, when I realized I could do just SEO, that was a relief as well because, I wasn't comfortable with the whole design thing. So I gradually, from 2008 through 10, shifted to taking on just pure SEO clients. And of course, it started with a lot of local SEO stuff. So my friend I mentioned, he's a piano tuner. And I took on my dentist as a client and a local nursery that's sold plants. So it really just learned by doing. And as I personally kind of grew into doing that, that's when I realized that I could do this as my full-time thing because I was still teaching music at the time. And that's when I went down to the office in the town and I registered Evolving SEO as an LLC, bought the domain name, and just slowly just started taking on clients and working it towards a full-time thing.
That really is the entrepreneur's dream right there, is just say, you know what, I have an idea, I have a passion, and I want to take this as far as I can. And you went as far as, getting the LLC, getting the website right away and just jumping into it and getting clients. And I think that's a fantastic success story in its own right. And the fact that you're still around and you're doing fantastic work for all these different businesses is just, it's unbelievable. And it really is something that I think other entrepreneurs can really look up to.
Yeah, it's funny because I've always said I'm kind of a reluctant entrepreneur. I'm just more somebody that shouldn't have a job. Like I'm not employee material. I'm too independent minded and too kind of just wanting to do my own thing. So working for my dad was really kind of the only thing closest to my like an actual job that I ever had. And of course, he was very lenient with me and kind of gave me a lot of freedom to play around with analytics. And I've set up a server for him at one point, and I remember spending 8 hours doing that when I should have been like doing an application for him and whatnot. But so he gave me freedom, which was nice. So I haven't really actually had a real job. So that's kind of my definition of being an entrepreneur, is just like, I can't function. I would not be a good employee, I don't think.
Funny that you mentioned that, because I just recently saw an interview with Mark Cuban, and he had mentioned the same thing, was just like, you know what, I was working for other people. I wanted to drive what I was doing in one direction. The company wanted to go the other direction. And at that point, I just realized, you know what, I'm not employee material. I got to do my own thing. So that's really cool to hear you now say that as well.
Yeah, and I also have very weird working habits and hours. I've tried being in a routine, and actually the last 2-3 months I've been most successful at that, almost every day getting up at 5:30 in the morning when I normally would never have done that. And so at least that's a routine. But other than that, I'll work some days here in my office. I'll go to coffee shops. I'll work at home. Some days the hours will be 5 in the morning to 6 at night, just without stopping. And some days it'll be 5 in the morning till 10, and then I'll just stop for 4 hours and then go back later in the evening. Sometimes I'll work 7 in the evening till 1 in the morning. So I'm very unpredictable like that, and I don't think I'd fit in very well into like a more structured environment.
I definitely think that's a big draw, at least for me, to be an entrepreneur, is that flexibility of setting your own schedule. And although it does feel like most weeks, certainly we work 80 hours plus, it is nice. Okay, I'm up at 5 a.m. and I'm working until 10, but then I have the day off if I want to. Or in my case, I like to work really late nights, and instead of waking up early in the morning to try to catch a bus to go somewhere.
There's been an article taking the rounds basically on Facebook and a few other locations. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but someone was pointing out that it's funny how entrepreneurs are more than willing to work 80 hours a week rather than 40 hours a week for someone else. I think that's very dead on, because it's all about passion. It's all about your interests. And I think also a bit touching on what you mentioned about the scheduling. It's, some people work on different schedules naturally. Like I can be more of a night owl than I am like an early morning person. So there's times where I'm up until 12 or 1 a.m. working on something, maybe even later. Whereas other people, they can't function past like 10 p.m. and they can only really wake up at like 4 or 5 a.m., run through the day and be all set by 4 or 5 p.m. So I think it really varies based on our kind of internal clocks and chemistry too.
Yeah, and I'll throw in one other thing about my journey. I've been trying to think of more stories that I can pull from, because I'm not very good at that, right? I just kind of talk about the same things everyone talks about. Well, I did this and I did that and I did that. But one thing I spent my entire college years doing was I was in a bucket band. And this was 4 friends, and it started in high school actually. And we were 3 people. We had gone and seen Blue Man Group and were obsessed with that. So we put together our own kind of group of drumming on buckets. And what happened was we did a performance at my old elementary school in Burlington, Massachusetts, and it went really well. And so I didn't know what marketing was, right? I just had this idea. I was like, hey, if we put together 500 postcards and mail them to all of the other schools, we could get gigs doing this over the summer instead of having to work at, 7-Eleven or McDonald's. And that's what we did. And my other friend that was in the group, he now went on and he works in Bloomberg News. He's one of like the highest people in Bloomberg. So this guy is really smart, but he went right home into Photoshop and designed this postcard that looked amazing. And, between the 3 of us, we kind of like somebody went and got 500 stamps, and then we got all the addresses to all the different elementary schools within like a 60-minute radius. We mailed them all out. That's what we did the entire summer for like 2 summers or 3 summers was we did gigs drumming on buckets for kids. And at that time we were charging maybe, $350 or $500 for a show. And thinking back on it in hindsight, we probably could have charged $2,000 because we didn't know. I mean, other people doing these types of gigs were adults, like people in their 30s, 40s, 50s charging probably adult prices. And that's probably why we got hired a lot. But it was those types of things that I always just did. And I did that for myself as a musician too. When I look back on it, I kind of say, okay, I guess I didn't know to call it being an entrepreneur or even direct mail marketing. I didn't even know what that was, but it was something that we just kind of naturally did in that situation.
Wow. That's really cool. So you could basically say that you can check that off the bucket list then.
Touche.
So now I'm sure that Evolving SEO, especially sticking with its name, is not the same company it was when you first started it. So out of my curiosity here, how much of that evolution of the company has been due to the advancements and changes within the realm of SEO as a whole?
Great question. Probably 50%. So 50% of it's been my personal evolution and learning different skills. But the other half of it has certainly been how SEO has been changing. So back when I started, that was pre-Panda, pre-Penguin. So you could get away with a lot of these things that you can't get away with now. And I never did those things, but it certainly made how I approached working for my clients different because, now more people are doing things, quote, the right way. And so there's more competition of people doing real marketing. So that's certainly something that's changed. And there's so many huge factors, but you've got mobile, you've got schema, you've got site speed becoming more important. You've got the advances in development platforms. So when I first built my dad's e-commerce site, WordPress was like WordPress 1.0. And I never would have even thought of using that to make a website. I mean, they were ugly. Like the templates were really like...
For sure.
They were garbage. So that's why I built the site by hand. But now if I was starting, I'd just grab WordPress or Squarespace or Shopify and we'd be off and running. So it would have been different. But it really gave me that hands-on experience of having to like go into PHP and figure all that stuff out. So I'm grateful for that too. But yeah, SEO is really always changing, obviously. So, we're doing more content services now for clients where I was never doing that at the beginning. We're actually creating content for clients. We're coming up with content strategies and promotion because that ties in so much to SEO. We're always changing what we're providing because of how SEO changes.
I think that's really a necessity for any industry, for any company. You have to evolve with the industry, and especially anything that's connected to technology. Those advancements are happening pretty much every single month.
Especially in tech. Yeah, if you're doing anything related to technology or website industry, that's absolutely true.
Now, I want to make sure for some of the people listening who might not be familiar when you mentioned Panda or Penguin, can you go into a little bit of description on those?
Absolutely. Those are 2 algorithm updates from Google. So a lot of people confuse them and call them penalties. They're technically not penalties. They're new algorithm facets to Google. So Panda is content quality, essentially. It's really, if you have thin content that has no value, or if you have a lot of just similar content on your site, that's what the Panda algorithm is going to look for. Or content that's just spun or not written by an expert. That's where the Panda algorithm is going to get you. And actually, just to drop in one of my podcast episodes, the very first one with Marie Haynes, episode 1 of Experts in the Wire, we go into pretty good detail on both of these. Penguin is more of a link-based penalty that has to do with over-optimization. So either internally or externally to your site, if you have links that the anchor is your keyword. So if you sell men's shoes and you're just linking to your men's shoes page with anchor text that says men's shoes, men's shoes, men's shoes all over the place, that's going to get you caught in a Penguin situation. And the thing with Penguin is it's not running real time or it's not running regularly like Panda is now. Penguin has not been updated. I think it's for over 2.5 years. So if you were somebody that got stuck in a Penguin algorithm situation, you're still waiting to see if the changes you have made are going to affect you positively. So that's been one of the frustrations with Penguin. So you can go back and listen to that episode number 1 for a lot more detail on those.
Awesome. No, thank you for explaining that to them. And yes, please listen to episode 1 of Experts on the Wire. I know I've listened to most of the episodes now, and I really highly recommend for folks to also check that out. It's a great resource with some great insights, some great guests. And Dan, you being on the other end, you're actually a pretty darn good host, I have to admit.
Thanks. I appreciate that, man. And I appreciate the shout out. I think it's just from many years of teaching, really, to be honest. You have to get really good at communicating things in a clear way. So that's probably where that came from.
So speaking of content marketing, there's obviously a lot of differences or some very big differences between SEO and content marketing. But there are definitely ways that content marketing and SEO can work together. So Can you give us your thoughts on how they can work together, how you've made them work together for your company?
Absolutely. I'm really passionate about this right now. So one of the most tangible ways is knowing what content to create to begin with and targeting content for search volume. So in other words, like, let's say you have a website and you have a blog and you're trying to figure out what to write about on your blog. Well, you can use keyword research and that type of intelligence to know what to write about, to know what the demand is. So, like, I'll give you an example. So I was doing some keyword research for a client that is kind of in the, I don't want to give it away too much, but they make a drink, like a healthy drink product. And so it's kind of in their research is kind of around nutrition, lifestyle, yoga. Like, that's the type of people that would kind of use this product. And so we can clearly see that people are searching Google for things like stevia. What is stevia? What's an alternative? Or like, what's bad about high fructose corn syrup? You know, should you hydrate before doing yoga? And there's actually debates around that. So we can see these things that people are searching around and get search volume on that, and then go and analyze the search results we see in Google to determine if there's a gap in opportunity. And meaning, could they add value to what already exists given this client's resources? So if we go to Google and we type hydrate before yoga, and the results there are crap, or they're old, or they're incomplete, or they're not written by an expert, or blah, 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 whatever it is, that's a gap where we could create content for the client based around that keyword. And when I say keyword, I really mean topic. So we're kind of addressing a whole bucket of keywords. Then we can create the content for the client and fit it into their content calendar to figure out when to publish it to go after that keyword. And often what happens is the keyword does represent search volume, but it represents demand from a consumer standpoint. So oftentimes that will align with content that may do well on social, or it might do well in terms of getting backlinks and whatnot. So we've really leveraged this type of keyword research to help clients come up with kind of a content calendar and determine what content to create to begin with.
That's a really smart strategy. I know there's definitely been plenty of times where I've searched for something online and the first 5 hits are from 2011. I found things from like 2004. It's relevant and it's useful, but I'm always then going on the second page or third page to actually find something that's from 2015 or 2016. So that's a really great strategy. I like that.
So I want to drop a tip here that if people are looking to create content, this is something I'm super excited about and passionate about right now, is I want everyone to get really good at reading search results, meaning don't just look at search results as a user. I mean, that's good, like you just said, but get good at analyzing what you're seeing and just be curious about it. So, for example, there was a search query one of my teammates here found. I think it was cat attacking feet, because we were looking for some examples of pet searches. And I don't know if this is true still, but when we went to Google and typed cat attacking feet, probably half the results didn't specifically address that. They addressed maybe cat attacking me or cat doing something wrong. But this is a nuance where that's like a gap, because the content isn't squarely addressing that intent. And so if you get really good at noticing that, I mean, sure, maybe some of the sites ranking have a high authority and maybe it's competitive from a domain authority standpoint, but it's not competitive from a relevance standpoint. So if you can sneak in there in relevance, then that's an advantage that you might have, even if you have a lower domain authority.
Oh, that's a fantastic tip. And actually, to get your thoughts on this too, I noticed that when we were trying to do some of our own SEO just to kind of understand it better and to really see what it's all about, because you hear it and it sounds like this mystical thing. And there's a lot of moving pieces to it, of course, but we wanted to try to demystify it a little bit for ourselves. And one of the things that we noticed for popular keywords were actually misspellings. So like if, for instance, we do video production as one of our things. So if we looked up video production, a lot of times what would score higher would be the search term like VIDO, because someone would miss like the E or something like that, especially if they're on like a mobile device, because the device that you're using can also alter what you're searching for in that respect. So what are your thoughts on that?
So misspelling optimization is really no longer a thing. It used to be that you could capitalize on that. Like you could go to the Google Keyword Ad Planner and find keywords that have search volume that are being misspelled and intentionally create misspelled content to rank for that. But for the most part, Google is doing a pretty good job at kind of, consolidating that. So it's not really a loophole anymore.
Yeah, I know that sometimes when I search for people's names, to do a little stalking online, Google will always be like, wait, did you mean this? And they'll try to come up with a word that looks similar to that person's name. And I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. Thank you, though.
Right, yeah.
So, Dan, do you think that there's any topics or issues, whether they're, currently existing or maybe coming up on the horizon, that can truly affect the relationship between this content marketing and SEO?
Yeah, everything. I mean, really everything. But getting back to technology, that technology is the big thing that changes the playing field, really. Mobile devices, that's the biggest shift in SEO that we've ever seen, because the factors are so, Google even has a separate mobile ranking algorithm now. And they've even said you should design a website thinking mobile first, because that's just percentage wise, more people are searching on mobile now. And that varies industry to industry. So of course you want to, be aware of that. But another thing that just came out today was Google just announced the Gboard. And I haven't used it yet, but it's basically you can search Google without a browser in iOS. It looked like I didn't look into it too specifically, so I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, but you basically can search for like a restaurant, maybe text that to somebody without even ever having to go to a browser. So these shifts in technology, and voice search is another big thing that's going to change. And there was just I don't know if you do show notes, but there was an article on Moz, I think last week, which I can send to you, that was probably the best article on voice search that I've seen. So it's really these technologies and how we interact with these devices. That's one of the biggest causes of changes in SEO. And then secondly is just Google itself, or I hate to say that like Google's the only search engine, but no one really uses Bing or Yahoo very much. But I will say that, and I just posted on Moz, and maybe this is how you found me, was that, podcast SEO is a thing, and video SEO in YouTube is a thing, and product SEO in Amazon is a thing. And I'll send you that link too if you need it. But I think looking at different verticals, and Yelp SEO is a thing, right? So you want to be looking at these other vertical platforms that are popping up. And if that's something super relevant to you, to be sure you're optimizing for that as well.
I love that attention too that you were mentioning about looking at different verticals. And I think that's really important because, again, that kind of demystification of SEO, we just assume a lot. I'm sure many people assume that when we say SEO, we just mean Google, for instance, because everyone's like, oh, well, I got to look at the Google Keyword Planner and I've got to look at the Google Analytics, and not really thinking about everything else that comes into play, such as you mentioned, like Yelp, and also even YouTube, of course, being part of Google, but they have their own kind of system for SEO for their videos as well. And people tend to forget that, and they just kind of throw their videos up online without ever thinking about the importance of the words and the descriptions and what's being put in for meta tags and the actual title itself, and how YouTube will index it and look at it for each search.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that when you think about how Google monetizes versus YouTube or Amazon or the iTunes store, Google monetizes on people searching and then clicking on ads. So we have data. We have search volume for Google keywords. We don't have that for the podcast store in iTunes. to my knowledge, we don't have that in YouTube, and we definitely don't have that in Amazon or Yelp or anything. So it's been interesting because I think the awareness and the access to that data is going to cause people to focus on Google, because 2,000 people a month are searching for X keyword, and you're like, well, I want to show up there. That's 2,000 people. If we knew 2,000 people a month were searching for marketing podcast in the iTunes store, we might be a little more aggressive about that. So it's been interesting, and I think there's pros and cons to that. Whereas the pro is that, yeah, we're going to try to market and optimize and show up there, but then you get a lot of people doing spammy things, and then Google has to clean it up. Where in the iTunes store, you don't know the search volume, so you're going to get a little bit less of that kind of spamminess behavior.
Yeah, it's interesting how much spam or loopholes that people have tried to utilize and kind of cheat their way through the system. All of a sudden, Google is just right on top of it, and now they'll make sure to penalize you for any of those little things. It's a good system, though. I really can appreciate Google doing something like that, because I think it's important. And again, all they want is the best for the people utilizing their systems. And they want to make sure that the best content comes up for that specific search. So they're really actually looking out for the users in that respect. And I think that's really nice to see, rather than so many other companies, it seems like at times, where the focus isn't so much on the user.
Yeah. And they are looking out for the user, but it's because it's what makes them money. If the users are happy, they search more, and then more people click on ads.
That's true. That's why they say don't search for it, but hey, Google it.
Yeah.
So now, with each industry and company, everything is unique and different, but we'd love to hear about your specific marketing journey. So how have you implemented marketing into your company in order to share your messaging and what Evolving SEO is all about?
Yeah. And by the way, I love your questions. They're really nice. I think the first thing I did was by accident. It kind of goes all the way back to my bucket band story. I didn't really realize I was marketing. And I did that by accident with Evolving SEO. So when I was first getting started, just because this is fun for me, I would look for events to attend. So I would drive 6 hours round trip to New York City. I did that 3 or 4 times in the first 6 months I had Evolving SEO going, to go to meetup events. I met the guys from Distilled, which is one of the big agencies down in New York. And I went to some conferences and some events and whatnot. And I was just doing something that was enjoyable for me. I'm a people person. I like to get out there and meet people. And by doing that, I got referrals. I wasn't planning on getting referrals, but that just kind of happened. And same thing happened online, where I would go to Moz and I would go to, these different sites and comment and interact with the authors on Twitter and just ask questions and just naturally be curious. I wasn't trying to get anything, but just because that's just how I go about things, that created the initial traction anyways for Evolving SEO. That's how I got my first kind of batch of clients, was just through that accidental networking. And then beyond that, then you've got to get a little bit more proactive. So what I've done since then, obviously starting a podcast is one, approach to that, just to it reaches a wider audience of people, which is great. But also things like, recently I've been using Harrow a lot, so help a reporter out. And I reply to Harrows probably 4 or 5 times a week. And, in the last probably 4 to 6 months, I've gotten some good mentions. So I got a mention in American Express. I got a mention on, I think it's LifeZet, like this entrepreneur website, and a few others. So that's been good too. Just kind of, it's a broad awareness thing, and it creates the serendipitous effect where people might discover that and then find me on Twitter and then follow me and then refer me to a friend. So it's kind of this cumulative effect that might happen. So I've been doing those 2 things, the podcast and the Harrows. I do try to guest contribute content when I can. So like for Moz, I'm writing something for the next web at the moment, and just trying to branch out that way. I'm doing a little bit more speaking as well. So like, as you said, I spoke at a Mozcation event. I've spoken at SMX, and I'll be speaking at the Affiliate Summit in New York. So just trying to do all these things to get out there and meet new people. I will say I'm not a huge fan of kind of these tricks or tactics, or like a lot of the fancy schmancy things you see a lot of like marketers do. Like, I'm not like, oh, I got to get you in my funnel and like get you on my email list, and then I'm going to like just, pound you with emails and then we're going to do a webinar. And, like I'm not like into that kind of stuff. I prefer, and I even wrote a post in my blog a little while back titled something like why I won't guest post for leads, because that kind of came up as like a topic here with me and my teammate. And I just realized I want to write content because I feel like I have something to say for that audience, not to just try to get leads, because it never comes out, genuine that way. People can smell that a mile away. But you see so many marketers doing this now. I mean, people, in the SEO or the content marketing or the growth hacking industries, it's all about like, these tricks, like the Facebook ad to the landing page to the welcome mat to like, you know what I mean? And that's just not how I like to go about things. So it does make it a little bit more challenging, I think, to get leads and to grow the business that way. But I want to be proud of how I did that at the end of the day.
Quality over quantity, basically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and just sticking to what I believe and what I'm comfortable with.
I think that's key, especially when you're heading the company. It's about what you feel comfortable with. It's about your philosophies and, what really started the company to begin with, and sticking with that and remembering that. And I know I agree with you completely 100%, because I feel like it's all about the human connection and being more transparent. And I think that doesn't happen enough. And we get bombarded, whether it's by ads or by phone calls and stuff like that. And at least on our end too, like when we're reaching out to someone, we actually want to connect with the person and create a relationship rather than just trying to get them to sign on the dotted line and haha, we have your money. That's not the point, especially, which you would completely understand this, it's service-based. So it's about that relationship because you're working with this person or this company for a span of time. It's not like selling a bobblehead or a pen where it's like, well, once you have it, sorry, and you just disappear in the shadows.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a quick story. And I posted something on my blog. I didn't name the company, but I'll name the company here because I don't have a problem with that. So like what you just said, you want to genuinely connect with people on your podcast, and that's what I want to do on mine. And I had this realization a few weeks ago that I really love community and what that can do for your marketing. And I'd written this post on Moz a few years ago about blog commenting and why that's important for your business. And I cited King Arthur Flower in there for having an exceptional community on their blog and Facebook. I mean, they have hundreds and sometimes up to 1,000 comments on a single post. Wow. I used some tools and tricks that I know of and found the email address of this lady. She's like actually an author. And then she went and worked for King Arthur Flower. And I emailed her to receive an email back from King Arthur's PR company or PR department. Like, I didn't email their PR department. I emailed this author that I wanted to talk to and connect with, like you said, and kind of have that type of relationship. And it was because I genuinely wanted to share just the exceptional job they're doing with the community, something I really believe in. And to get an email back from the PR company who the lady that emailed me back obviously totally misunderstood what I was asking for in my initial request was definitely a little discouraging. And it's too bad because I really wanted to put that company on a platform and share with the world or anybody that would listen how great they are a community. And it's been too bad. But I think that's back to what you said. It's because they're used to getting bombarded with kind of these ulterior motive requests where, it's like, what can I get? What can I get from them? And that's not what I was trying to do at all. So, oh well.
Well, we got your back, and so does every listener right now. They've got your back. They know.
Appreciate that. Maybe one day I'll get them on the show. We'll see.
Yeah, knock on wood. See, if you're listening, folks, from this company, give him a call. He just wants to chat. He's not going to bite. He won't hurt you. You've been tested for rabies, right? That's clear?
Yes. Yeah, it is now.
Okay, good. See, not foaming at the mouth anymore, so you're safe. Now, I'm curious because you were talking about your podcast here, Experts on the Wire, and I'd love to hear the story behind that. Like, what drove you to create this, and how did you come up with the idea in the first place?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this because I would love to tell the story. It came about in a weird amalgamation of ways. So,
was there a bucket involved in this?
No buckets involved, but many people. So I actually had tried to start a podcast 3 times prior to this. A music podcast, an SEO podcast with a friend of mine named Ross Hudgens who runs Siege Media. and then my own SEO podcast. And I never did it. Like, I had actually recorded 5 episodes and then just never published it. I don't think I was ready. But my teammate, who has been working with us since September, he was really getting on me. He's like, you got to do a show. You got to do a show. And finally, we kind of said, okay, let's do a show. I made the initial invite to the first guest, Marie Haynes. I had no idea what format it was going to be, how I would even record it, or like anything about it. I just said, I know myself. If I schedule the first interview, it's going to force me to do it and start. So that's what I did. I scheduled the first interview, which I think was in February. The night before the interview, I was having a discussion with my wife. And what I've learned and what Gary Vaynerchuk teaches is this whole self-awareness thing. And he teaches that you should listen to those that are closest to you to know more about yourself, right? To hold a mirror up to you. And it just, my wife didn't even know that we were going to be launching a show, right? I was just talking to her and she said, you know, you're okay on video, but you're really good with audio. And I was like, yeah, gee, thanks. Like, would you saying I'm ugly or something? But no, what she really meant was, she's like, when I hear you talk to clients, like, you sound like that's really where you're most confident. You sound like very assured of yourself and all this and that. She said, sometimes when I see you in people, you come across as like a little like overly excited or whatnot. It can be an energy that might turn people off. And I said, all right, like let's get to some compliments here, you know. But essentially, I took that and I said, okay, I'm going to do my show tomorrow. I'm going to do the interview as a podcast. And that's it. That's how I decided. It was basically my wife having no idea that she was consulting with me on the fact that it should be an audio-based format show, because that's where I'm strong. I didn't even know how I was going to record the show, literally, until 2 minutes before the interview was supposed to start. I started Googling Skype, how to record a Skype call. I bought the $30 software and installed it literally in the 30 seconds before I was supposed to do this first interview. Didn't even know if I had it working. I didn't have this mic set up yet. I just used like my earbuds and just got it installed and hit go, and we were off. That interview was so much fun that right after we hit stop and I hung up, I immediately emailed 10 people to book on my show. Because I know myself, back to like the whole, like, I can't work for somebody. I need to run with that when I'm feeling passionate about it in the moment. And if I knew that if I didn't do it right then, that I would never have scheduled it and continued it. So we booked the next 10 guests all in one day. And I record probably anywhere from 2 to 4 shows a week. So I've got them all queued up. And we've been off and running since then. Now, the name, I will say, was a little harder to get to. And I do talk about it in my intro episode. But briefly here, back to the community thing. I think about marketing as communication, right? It's people to people. And so when I was thinking about the name, I wanted some kind of like digital communication word, but I didn't know what it was until later that day. I was driving and I looked up and I saw the wires, and I was like, all right, that's the word I was looking for right there, wire, just representing digital communication between two people. And I came to find out later, as I said to you at the beginning of this call, the building I'm sitting in used to be a wire manufacturing company. And that was that was just complete coincidence. And I'm a huge hip hop fan too. So it's also just a slight hat tip to to Through the Wire, the Kanye West song, which is one of my favorite hip hop songs.
I knew I liked you. All right.
So yeah, I mean, kind of in a long roundabout way, that's how the show came to be. And I really do love the audio format. So it's been a ton of fun making it.
No, that's incredibly exciting. And, you know, there's a saying out there for entrepreneurs, which is they don't jump off the cliff with the parachute on. They basically jump off the cliff and make the parachute on the way down. And that sounds like the exact same process with this.
That's completely what happened.
It's like, well, I know where I need to go. So as long as I just start, going in motion, eventually it'll all catch up. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you have to, like I found, like I said, I have to take the first step, which gets me to, one thing I found with consulting is I will finish work sooner if I just book the phone call. So like if I have a deliverable due in 4 weeks, but I book a phone call to review it in 2 weeks, I'll do it sooner. It's like that deadline. It's just having that person that's going to hold me accountable really motivates me.
Yeah, it's having a structure. And of course, being an owner of a company, you don't have anyone looming over you going, now, did you do this? Did you make sure to do this? And, you know, that kind of mother theory of like when you're going off to campsite, now, did you make sure to pack your underwear? And, you know, did you bring your cookies with, you know, you don't have anyone. You just have yourself. So yeah, I think having those kind of guidelines and that structure can really help go, okay, this is where I need to go. Because otherwise it's limitless. You can go anywhere.
Right. And I've done that. I've literally procrastinated work for a month or 2 months. And just after, you know, that was 5 years ago, but after learning about myself, have found hacks to get around doing that.
I'm going to have to question you after this about those hacks. I'm write down a list.
Absolutely.
Are there any upcoming episodes of Experts on the Wire that you're specifically excited about that you want our listeners to keep an eye out for, or an ear out for, I guess?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked this. So there's the kind of the known people in SEO and marketing that I have coming up. You know, Rand Fishkin will be on the show from Moz, and Will Reynolds from Seer Interactive. I'm interviewing both of them soon. But the two that are really kind of off the path I'm excited about, this guy named Sree, and I'm not going to try to say his last name, but his Twitter is @Sree, Sree. He is the chief digital officer at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And like I was saying before the show or during the show, my dad's a sculptor, so I'm super passionate about art. And he did a great TED Talk about attention, which I recommend everyone check out. And I really love his approach to digital and marketing, so I'm super excited to have him on the show. And then there's a company called Drumeo. So I'm a musician. I played piano and drums. And this company, Drumeo, they have an amazing YouTube channel and community. I think they have like 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. And their YouTube shows get, 30,000 views or more. It's basically instructional videos for drummers. But what they've really done with that channel and community, I think is pretty remarkable. And of course, being a musician and drummer, that's secondarily why I'm excited to have them on the show too. But I also really want to learn about what they did to develop such a thriving community. So those two shows I'm super excited about.
Heck, we're excited for you. That sounds like such a great range of people from different experiences and different backgrounds. And I think that's what really can keep a show well-rounded and really engage listeners. I think that's so important to have that. And I think, especially on your end too, and I know for us, this is the same way, that we're just excited to have guests on in the sense of we also learn something new every single time because, we don't have the same experience that you do. And, we don't have the same background. So to be able to hear that firsthand is just so exciting. And it's just such a unique situation that we just absolutely love.
And it's really great too to hear some similarities too, about some people's experiences or the reasoning behind why they did something. And it's always nice to kind of see, oh, me too. And it's nice to find those commonalities as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to do that. I'm learning. So the Drumeo was the most off the path thing that I've got lined up. But that was kind of like the very first day I wrote that. I have kind of a wish list of like these. There's a actual drummer I'd love to interview as well. His name is Dave King, and he did the show on YouTube called Rational Funk, which I recommend everyone look up. But it's actually a mock instructional series. It is hilarious. And I think he did about 60 episodes and then just finally kind of closed it down. But for somebody in a niche area, he was getting a lot of community interaction and views, and he's somebody I'd love to interview too. I would love to go a little off the path and interview a comedian or somebody in the performing arts or television or film to tie that back into marketing and kind of content and digital content as well. So yeah, absolutely.
That's true, especially with entertainment. Everything is going digital now, and a lot of independent filmmakers have really been able to get seen because they're able to now just put their film up onto YouTube or onto Vimeo or onto so many other different platforms that are out there that they can get a full wide range audience, where before, they had to basically scratch and just fight to get through film festivals and to get seen at movie theaters and things like that. So it's made it so much easier to get content out there.
Yeah, so Louis C.K., if you're out there, you call me. I'll be waiting. Ready for that interview. Ready when you are.
Let's jump on and do this. All right. Now, to kind of go off of the marketing that you had talked about and content and so forth, we like to do this, what we call a wow section, which is our words of wisdom. So if you were giving advice to someone who's looking to launch their company, but they're just not sure where to start or where to go with their marketing and SEO, what are some core points that they should focus on first?
Yeah, so it all depends a little on the type of company, but the one overlying commonality is your website, right? Like a lot of people want to jump into social or get into blogging or get into this and that, but you have to set up the core product and services content on your website. You need a strong foundation, right, from the very beginning. And this goes back to keyword research and where SEO can really help inform this. So the mistake a lot of people make is they hire a web designer, they get a developer, this and that. They build the website, they launch it, and then 3 months later, they call me and ask, well, now can you put SEO into the website? And that's not really how it works, right? The best SEO is done from the beginning. So the SEO is actually one of the first people involved doing keyword research, helping to determine the architecture of the site. So what the pages are, the URLs, the hierarchy, the navigation, the menus, and especially if you're dealing with e-commerce or a site that's bigger and gets more complicated, you want to be looking at that aspect of SEO from the very beginning. And so beyond that, getting the architecture set on your site, well, now you need great content on your site. And I'm not talking about blog content or articles. I'm just saying your core product and service content. So not only should that be optimized for search, but, you know, is it just at least anecdotally, is it good for users, right? Does it help show what your product and services are? Like, does it help show the benefits? An episode people can listen to is with Amy Harrison, who talks about copywriting and about all these great ways to look at what she calls umbrella terms and contrast and even putting humor in your copy. Or you can go look at a website like Unbounce or Conversion XL or any of these sites that talk about great copywriting and CRO, and make sure that you're building that into the core of your website. And this is even something, to be totally honest, like I'm not great with keeping up with. If you look at my website right now, I'm not happy with it, right? I need to update my services. It could be, the language could be better and this and that. But that's really where you need to start if you're starting a new company, is the core part of your website. And then you can get out and, you know, do social and guest blogging or blog content and everything else. But you got to get the website set up well.
That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like a retail store saying, okay, we're open, we're launched, but they don't have a brick and mortar. It's just basically them selling it out of the back of a van. You know, it's like you want to have that core, that foundation set up so people can actually walk in, know what you're all about, understand your branding and your messaging, and ideally look around and feel welcomed. And, you know, you're not going to also open halfway through when there's still construction going on and people have to dodge and duck around heavy machinery and materials. It's like you wait till the finished product is there and then you launch it and get it out there for people to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond that, then what to do after that? It really is just marketing 101. Where is your audience? Where's your potential customers? And I know that's like sounds simple, but a lot of people miss that. They think by default, oh, I need to be on Facebook or I need to be on Twitter or Snapchat or whatever it is. But not always. And especially when you're starting out, and especially if you need to be scrappy and you don't have a lot of resources, you know, like I didn't do anything besides Twitter for the first year or two. That's really all I focused on. But that's because where all the other SEOs were and the people interested in marketing. So I think you really want to make sure you're finding your audience and being present there.
Well, yeah, I think that's absolutely key, is understanding your audience. And I know that there's too many times where companies will put out information or content and just say, well, it's because we need to do it. You know, everyone else is doing it, so we should too. But it's like, but is your audience really there? Or are you expending energy that you don't need to expend? And you can put that into something that's actually more important.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Dan, for being on. It's been fantastic to have you on with your energy and your expertise, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you so much. And can you tell the audience where they can find you on the interwebs?
Yes, you can go to evolvingseo.com. That's the company website. On Twitter, I'm at Dan_Shure, Shure, spelled like the microphone, for those of you that know. I also do some photography for anybody that's interested. So on Instagram, I'm at Dan Shure with no underscore. And usually from Twitter or from my website, you can find, all the other places I am. Once in a while, I'll hop on Periscope and do a live video. I think I'm just at Dan Shure there. And nobody uses Google+, so you don't need to worry about that. I might start using Facebook, actually. I'm actually I'm one of 5 Americans that does not use Facebook or people on the planet. So I might be there eventually, but not yet.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And audience, please make sure to visit him, say hi, and engage with him.
And we'll have links in our description to all of the articles and podcast episodes that we've mentioned, and we'll also include some contact information as well. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in today to hear our featured guest, Dan Shure from Evolving SEO. This has been episode 25 of Branch Out. If you'd like to hear more on digital media and marketing, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud. I'm Tatiana Ivan.
And I'm Evan Charles Anderson.
And we'll see you next week.